Oh, it is such a good day to be recording outside. Oh my goodness. It's like 75 degrees out here and it's not humid. I just hope I don't get rained on. It's not supposed to rain, but I live in the Midwest, so you know how it is. We wait 5 minutes. It'll change. So today we are here to do week 5 of One Book July. It's our last little bit of the Notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper by Roland. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you all have enjoyed it, even a fraction as much as I have, because I have enjoyed the heck out of this. So we are doing chapters 28 through 30 and then the conclusion today. So chapter 28 is about patient diaries, and I don't know if I even knew that this was a thing. It's dated 1952 to present. So the point is made that patients are put into intensive care to recover, but they also need to recover from having been in intensive care. A lot of people have a lot of issues, coming out of intensive care, coming out of a coma, and the impact that has on them is huge. So in Denmark in the 1970s, nurses in the ICU started making daily diary entries for patients to read later. And as this evolved, visiting family and friends could add to the diary as well. And one study showed that this cut the risk of PTSD from having been in intensive care for so long by more than 60%, which is a huge deal. There's a quote on page 346 about this. Where's my page tab? One last observation. The patient diary's origins among the needles and tubes of Danish wards had nothing to do with laboratories, big pharma, or international conferences. It was not an invention of consultants, surgeons, or doctors. Nurses came up with it, repurposing an everyday item, making it the epitome of a frontline, grassroots, hands-on solution. Pragmatic, compassionate, effective, and cheap. They invented a new genre of notebook writing, the therapeutic diary, which the beneficiary has no part in composing, turning a plain page into a place of hope, empathy, and compassion. I loved that. I absolutely loved that. When I have needed healthcare, I've been very lucky to have very good nurses. One of our boys actually starts nursing school this fall as well. But I thought that was fantastic. So that is chapter 28, and there's a lot more in that chapter that I'm leaving out. So please don't skip it. Chapter 29 is notebook studies. So this is where we kind of go from studying people's works, the end result, versus studying the process of them getting there, which could mean studying their notebooks, right? I thought somebody was opening the back door. So chapter 29, notebook studies, 1883 to present. So Jean-Paul Richter was the person who studied Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, and until he set himself that task, people focused on an individual or on their works, like the end result, right? Like I was just saying, studying the notebooks gave insight into the process and not just the product. And that's the stuff I've always been fascinated with too, is the process. This chapter is slam full of allusions to brilliant people in their field. Literary, scientific, artistic, musical, cinematic. This was a great kind of overview chapter of what studying people's notebooks can yield, regardless of what field they are in, if that makes sense. And I really do think I'm more personally in love with the creative process than the end result. And that's not to say I don't enjoy the end result. I love music. I love books. So you know what I mean? I love movies. I love looking at paintings. But there's something about the process that yields that end result that I have always been enamored with. So I was really happy to see a chapter kind of dedicated to that. Chapter 30 is Observing Artists, 2022. So it was bothering our author, Roland that, remember we talked way back in the beginning about Giotto, and he made this huge leap in figure painting. Jack is standing in the back window waving his arms at me. He's trying to end me. So it was bothering Roland that Giotto's leap in figure painting came so soon after his access to paper happened. So he wanted to see if he could kind of prove that access to paper, even if he didn't have it for a super long period of time, like decades, would still have helped yield the huge leap in painting that Giotto made. So Roland Allen visits Humphrey Ocean to talk with him and see his sketchbooks. And I this whole section was so cool to me. Ocean's been involved in several art science studies. So Ocean is a painter, and he has been involved in these art science studies. So in one study, he drew while he was in an MRI machine, and they were mapping his brain. And then in another study he participated in, his eye and hand movements were tracked. And there's quite a bit in the book about what that showed, what those results were, what parts of the brain remained active, in artists versus like somebody like me getting in an MRI machine and drawing something. Completely different parts of the brain light up. Super fascinating. So the chapter then kind of morphs into talking about the advantage of paper notebooks, and it's been shown time and again that paper notebooks hold the advantage over lots of digital means of, let's say, note-taking. Process stuff. It looks like studies have shown process stuff happens better on paper. And there was a study in the book that was done in Japan in 2021, and it's the same study that I wrote a paper in school about the advantage of handwriting physical notes over digital means, and the same study that I worked off of was noted in the book as well, so that kind of made me giggle. And then there's a quote on page 371. Well, that can't be the right page. I didn't put a tab on this. The very end of our chapter 30 is there's a line that says, "Use it enough and a notebook will change your brain." And that really is what those studies, the MRI studies, the art science studies that Humphrey Ocean participated in, they really did show that over time, using your brain in conjunction with paper changes the way your brain works. You lay down more neural connections. You tend to remember things better. Different parts of your brain become more active the more that you physically do whatever it is you're doing in a notebook, working math problems, taking notes, drawing, whatever the case may be. So it's actually true. If you use it enough, a notebook will change your brain. And then we are to the conclusion, and I found this really interesting. It's called The Extended Mind, 1938 to present, and this conclusion wraps this book up so phenomenally well. So Roland Allen is talking about his notebooks and his grandfather's journals, and that was where I had put, he has his grandfather's journals from 1938, 39, and 40, and he kind of gives a summary of the things that his grandfather wrote about in his journals. And on page 373, Roland Allen says, "Reading his diary, which evoked so much in so few words, prompted me to keep my own, accidentally setting me on the trail that concludes here." He also talks about how he has his notebooks and journals and whatnot in like bins and boxes under his desk. So that's at the beginning of this chapter, and he alludes back to that, talking about the notebooks that he's taken his notes to write this book in. "When this book's done, the notebooks will be retired into those same boxes, which are readily accessible and handy for the door. If the flat ever catches fire, they're the possessions I plan to rescue from the flames." And I think we can all relate to that a little bit. If you're interested enough to read a book about notebook, I think you understand wanting to rescue your notebooks if there were ever a circumstance in which they needed to be rescued. Let's see. Oh, so there were two philosophers, Andy Clark and David Chalmers, were two philosophers who challenged the notion that thought only occurs in the brain. They kind of do this thought experiment, talking about if you are thinking about something and you're working it out on paper, or if you're thinking about something and taking notes on it, is this an extension of your brain? And they do this thought experiment. It's called active externalism. They do this thought experiment involving Otto and Inga, which is really fascinating. You should read it. Otto has to remember things by keeping them in a notebook, and Inga does not. And they talk about, you know, what happens if you tear a page out of Otto's notebook, what happens to his day or his memories, versus what happens to Inga. Is that the same as taking a memory from her? Very interesting thought experiment. I fell way down the rabbit hole. They wrote a philosophy paper called The Extended Mind, and it became the most cited philosophy paper of the 1990s. So I immediately had to go find this paper and read it, and it is really fascinating. There's a quote on page 380 that says, we should all be grateful to their customers. They're talking about companies that make notebooks. We should be grateful to their customers who realized the notebook's affordances and who understood implicitly that by taking the time and effort to externalize their thoughts, to draw a line, to work out a sum, or manipulate an equation, they were expanding their minds. To do so, to open up to a blank page and interact with it, takes energy and sometimes a little courage, but the rewards may surprise. So this entire conclusion touches on something I've really thought about, like, for most of my life. Like, what if I had been born way back before notebooks, before printed books? Like, notebooks and books are so inherently intertwined with who I am, capital letters, that I've thought about this since I was a kid. I remember having this thought, like, what would I have done with myself if I had been born before printed books were readily available, before notebooks? If I didn't have these things that in my head these are who I am, these are a huge part of who I am. I realize I wouldn't know, had I been born way back then, I wouldn't know what I was missing because I never would have had it, but would I have known that I was missing something? Right? And I have thought about that so much. And again, this conclusion brought that right back up to the forefront of my thinking again. And the last thing that I can say about this book, and that this conclusion especially really solidified for me, is how I've always felt about my notebooks. It's more than a possession that I love. While I do love it, it's more than an object that brings order to and comfort during chaos. I've always said my notebook is my surrogate brain. Once I started journaling a lot more actively and deeply, I always said, okay, my notebook's my surrogate brain and heart, right? It serves so many purposes for me. And these things, the paper, whether it be, you know, printed or my crazy handwriting, these things are inherently a part of me, a part of who I am. And this whole concept of the extended mind really solidifies that for me, that my notebooks are an extension of me, and I don't know how I would be the same without them. So that is it, you guys. That is it for One Book July 2025. We made it. I have absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this book. I feel like I ran out of adjectives this month. Fascinating, intelligent, interesting. I love this, right? I've said it over and over. So, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you, Roland Allen, for filling all of your notebooks to give us this book. I really appreciate it. This has been, I've learned so much, and I really love the wrap up of the book is just so good, and it summarizes the entire book so well. And then to me, it takes it to that next level because I can relate to that last chapter, like I said. So I hope One Book July has treated you all well. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you're not caught up, don't worry about it. This is not supposed to be a race, right? And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me this month. I have had a really good time. And maybe we'll do another read along, maybe for September. That might be fun. So if you guys want me to do another read along for September, let me know down in the comments, okay? Because I have an idea for a book to do for a read along, but I'd like to hear from you all too. Okay? Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.